Just admit the rest of saying that DevSecOps. So I was asking the team what DevSecOps is. Maybe I can just start from there. So, to your understanding, what is DevSecOps?
I think it's more about reducing for it's like security things rather than developing.
Okay.
Yeah, like reducing the vulnerabilities, like those stuff.
Okay. Okay.
That's what I think.
Yeah. So actually, even this one is not. It's not even supposed to be developers, but it's supposed to be something like development, because well, so there's an element. So DevSecOps is a combination of different things. First of all, there is an element. There's something to do with development, and then there is something to do with security, and then it has also an element of operations. So initially, we used to have. If you look at the history of software development, it used to focus so much on the waterfall. And I understand that most of you already have gone through the software development life cycle, and you've seen different types of the software development life cycle, and waterfall is one of them. And we have the most prominent one right now called agile, and you can mention others. There are quite a number. So, but initially people used to use waterfall software development lifecycle, waterfall model. And if can someone tell us how the waterfall model operates, just briefly? Anyone? So the difference, maybe give us the difference between waterfall and agile, if you don't mind. Yes, please go ahead.
Um, so as far as I know, waterfall, when we are developing a software, we have two methods we can use. One is plan driven, which like we first plan from the start to the end. We really focus on documentation and planning. So this is one way of uh, the one method of developing, which waterfall also falls into this. So like in waterfall, we um, we plan from the start for every phase, and then there is no going back. Like you first finish the first, like for example, the first phase plan. You first plan. After you plan, you analyze, and then after you analyze, you design. So it just follows. You first finish the first part, then you go to the second part.
Yeah.
But like yeah, in agile, you it's really it's not that strict. You can always go back and fix things. It's incremental. You always just see what's left, what can we make better. Yeah,
Okay. I think this one we can say it's incremental,
yeah.
because it's
With
instead
what?
just you start from you plan, and then you start from you have to get done with one stage, then move to the next, like that, until you get to the end, and then you can do the deployment. But this one is iterative. uh, it is
Oh, okay.
repetitive, so you can easily, you know, do. Is it also incremental? Yeah, it's
I
also
think
incremental.
incremental. Yeah.
Yes, yes, but it is iterative. So you come up with something like a prototype, and then you deploy it, and then you incrementally add features as you do deployment, frequent deployments. Yeah,
Yes.
unlike this one where you have to get done with everything and then you do deployment. But with this one, you handle things iteratively in bits.
Yes.
Yeah, so that was a good differentiation between the two. So when we're talking about DevSecOps or DevOps for that matter, we highly emphasize on using the agile methodology or model in the software development lifecycle, and we tend to do away with waterfall, and there are reasons behind that. So, this DevSecOps or DevOps, this one became prominent around 2007 to 2007 2008, and ever since it has been the thing now in the industry. So it's a good thing for you also to learn. Yeah. Okay. So basically that is what DevOps is and how did it come to being, because we used to have the waterfall method and we used to have lots of conflict between the developers and the operations team. Yeah, because you get the developers work on something, and then when it gets to the deployment stage where the operations team they need to take over from the developers, they also encounter problems and they point fingers at the developer and say, hey, you guys did not do this properly and stuff, and the application cannot be deployed and things like that. So to reduce the conflict between the two, the developers and the operations team, that's why it was important to come up with the DevOps, which ensures that the developers and the operations team don't work in silos, and they have this good coordination between them that ensures for quick delivery of software and quick deployment. Yeah, so using the agile method, of course. So we have advantages that come with using DevOps, and so security came in because we also with the quick development and deployment of the application, there also come security concerns along the way. So to address those, that's why we introduced security. And so at least with DevSecOps, we are shifting security to the left. That means while we are doing even planning, we have at each element, each stage, we have to think about security, simply put. Yeah, so we don't think about security after we are done with every other thing. So that before deployment maybe, and then maybe even sometimes what used to happen before is after we've even deployed, people are using, that's when we start thinking about security, or we start resolving security issues. But right now we have a proactive way of handling security, where before we even do the development, we look at security issues first, and we look at the security before and along the development life cycle of the applications. So that's why we have DevSecOps. So security becomes also an integral bit of the whole process, which is important. So maybe just to the team, so what are some of the key features in DevSecOps? So as I mentioned before, there is integration of security, which wasn't something that was taken into consideration. So yeah, we're emphasizing on embedding security measures from the planning stage all the way to development, testing, deployment. Yeah, all those stages we factor in security. And then there is also with DevOps, another thing that when you hear DevOps, there is integration of security, DevSecOps, and also there is automation. Because there's no DevSecOps without automation, or DevOps without automation. So automation is also another integral component of DevOps. So and basically what we mean here, it's just means the use of automation tools. So we'll be looking at different automation tools. There are so many tools for each stage. We're going to break it down. We're going to break DevOps into a number of components that form the whole DevOps cycle. So we're going to look at each stage, what tools do we use, and we'll also pick a tool. Most probably we'll use open source tools for now, because we don't have the finances to use proprietary tools. But all the same, we'll mention those tools you need to know, because when you get to the industry, you need to at least have an idea. So there's an element of automation and the automation tools, which basically streamlines security checks and processes along the way. Yeah, so automation in terms of continuous integration and continuous delivery and continuous deployment, because CI/CD stands for continuous integration, continuous deployment, and delivery and deployment. So and this is where we're talking of pipelines. So you automate everything, and you have like a pipeline of all the processes automated into that pipeline. So automation, and also we can automate even things like monitoring. Yeah, monitoring in terms of we want to monitor the usage and how the application monitor the applications running or not running, things like that. The usage, you can monitor security, you can monitor a lot of things. So there's an element of monitoring, and we can also automate monitoring. We can automate feedback and so on and so forth. So there's quite a lot to be done here to streamline the whole process. So automation actually just streamlines everything. And then in DevOps also we will talk, because it's not just about you acquiring technical skills. There's an element of soft skill, because you understand that we have different teams, as we mentioned. We have the developers or the development team. We have a team that handles security. We have the operations team. So there's an element of collaboration, and we also have tools for that. So there is collaboration amongst teams, across teams. So soft skills like communication skills will be very important. Not blaming each other when issues arise. So learning to work in a blameless kind of environment. Yeah, owning responsibility and stuff like that. So there is collaboration, and of course there'll be an element of since there's security, there is an element to do with policy. And for those who've done security, you've looked at international regulations, that govern. There are different regulatory standards right now. For example, to do with data protection, like GDPR. There's another international regulation. If you're handling if you're handling payment, if you're handling payment card information, there's you have to comply to international standards like PCI DSS, for example. If you're handling, if your application is a healthcare kind of application and you're handling healthcare data, there is something like HIPAA, and so on and so forth. So there are different kinds of policies and regulations that you need also to ensure that you enforce within your pipeline. So we'll also look at how you can enforce those within your DevSecOps pipeline to ensure that you are compliant to these international standards and regulations. So there's quite a lot, and this one also is a component of security, because those standards actually fall under security. Well, so with that explained, there comes a number of benefits of DevSecOps. One, of course, the team can basically tell me some of the benefits from what I've just explained. Could you pinpoint some of the benefits before we dive deep into DevSecOps itself? What are some of the benefits of DevSecOps? Yeah. Someone is just speak up. Don't even waste time. We don't have time. Don't even waste time raising your hand. Just start speaking for as long as your mic is
Um, okay. I think Salim was raising his hand in. Anyway, so just one thing is like obvious thing is like we will have more secured application, which is more reliable.
Sure.
Since we are integrating security in every phase, it will be more secured instead of like doing security after everything is done.
Correct. So there is an element of improved security.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. What else? Of course, improved security will result to an improved software quality, because if the software if you've not factored in security and your software is not secure, then the quality of the software is low. So we talked of waterfall, and you looking at waterfall, you see that it takes quite a lot of time for you to have a delivery or a deployment, right? With the DevSecOps, there is we have faster delivery and deployments, because we don't wait until we are done with everything. So you can actually have a product without the complete features, but with the needed features at that point in time. As you're waiting for more features, you can start using the application. So you don't have to wait until the application is fully done for you to start using it. So we can have these quick deployments, deliveries and deployments. So the thing is faster delivery and faster delivery times. Yeah, that's an advantage. So you don't have to wait for all the stages to be done like in waterfall for you to get the application delivered. And then of course DevOps fosters team collaboration. Yeah, because this is an integral bit of DevSecOps. So there is an element of team collaboration. And then of course, since we are going to, so one advantage of shifting security to the left, one big advantage is the very fact that at the end of the day we are going to have reduced cost in terms of addressing the security issues. So if we did not do that, you get that you ship an application, and then when it gets out there with the loss of vulnerabilities, it gets hacked, and that comes with a lot of fines, a lot of losses to the organization in terms of data and so on and so forth, which can be so costly to the organization. So if we could address some of those issues with the use of DevOps, then we are going to have it's going to be less costly in terms of addressing some of the security concerns that might come up in future, because that basically means you're going to have less security concerns in future, as in compared to us not using DevSecOps, for example. Yeah, so reduce costs. Does anyone have anything else? Okay, so we have that, and
What about disadvantage?
yeah,
Does it have,
okay.
do you think,
I never thought about that.
yeah, do you think, I don't know, I just thought
Yeah.
including security in every, like trying to integrate security again and again in every stage, it might be time consuming, although we will end up getting more qualified software functionalities. But what's the disadvantages? What do you think?
Okay, so time consuming in terms of addressing security issues. Yeah, that is true. I totally agree with you, because if we have to do scanning, if we have to discuss design issues around security and stuff, that might take some time. And like before, where we just started development and we deployed the thing without really focusing so much on security. Security was an afterthought, but right now it is shifted to the left. Yeah, that is true. Yeah, I never thought about that, but that's great. So can we? So some of the things you need to know before you, or some of the things that we are going to that you need to look at in the whole the DevSecOps thing. I could call them requirements they need to know. So what are the things you need to know? So number one, there's an element of networking. This one you're not going to avoid, and mostly network protocols. So I'll pick some of the protocols that maybe you need to know, because at the end of the day you're going to configure stuff on cloud, and that some of the things you'll be configuring will have to do with networking concepts. So you need to understand networking, and most probably the protocols. So some of the crucial protocols like DNS, I have a video on protocols, but anyway, I can still do one just for DevSecOps. DNS, there's TCP/IP. Yeah, understand that. Understand there is SSL, because these are things that when you're enforcing security, you basically have to deal with the protocols. So there is at that point where you might scan your containers and things like that, and you get a report that you're using insecure protocol for communication. It's exposing data, things like that. So there's a thing to do with HTTP if you're doing web applications, or applications that communicate via the web. HTTP, HTTPS, SSL, TLS, and there's so many protocols. So based on whatever product you're working on, then you have to look at some of these protocols. You're configuring you might be configuring what do you call this, your virtual machines. Yeah, can be instances like EC2 instances, for example, and so on and so forth. Or you want to RDP into this. Yeah, so using something like it's normally what SSH. Yeah, you want to or RDP protocol. So then there are many protocols here you will be interacting with at the end of the day. So networking concepts, it's a thing that you need to familiarize yourself with. But I look at some of the crucial protocols, and we can okay, sorry about it. So number 2, we've already looked at some of these things like Git, the version control system. So we looked at Git, and we said that Git is a distributed version control system, but we also understand that we have different types of version control system, like centralized version control system like SVM or SVN, Mercurial. So all this we can also integrate them into the pipeline. So not necessarily need, but the mostly used one will be Git. Okay, so that's to do with the version control system. But also with the version control system, we have the things like GitHub and GitLab. By the way, GitLab is very good for DevOps. You'll be told that. So we have GitLab, we have Bitbucket. You can version control, source control, places where you can do source control of your project. Yeah, so mostly for DevOps, what makes it so easy to handle DevOps is GitLab. It has so many of these tools, so maybe you might want to go and look, but it has some things that are proprietary, some are free, some are proprietary, and so on and so on. But it's easy to set up pipelines there and to manage those. Although nowadays also GitHub has really improved, so it's trying to match GitLab. Well, and then there's an element to do with the containers, and that's just what we looked at the previous in our previous sessions, and mostly we'll be dealing with Docker. So containers. So but we looked at that, so you should be good if you went through that course. And then there is another thing, CI/CD. How do you come up with CI/CD pipelines? Yeah, and if you're using GitHub, we have what we call Git workflow. So this one, we can use Git workflow to automate the whole process. Yeah. So yeah, under CI/CD, besides using, is it Git workflow or Git actions? Actually, Git actions. Under Git actions, we have the Git workflow. So it's Git actions, GitHub actions. You can use GitHub actions. You can use Jenkins to basically automate the CI/CD pipeline. Yeah, and GitLab. How am I forgetting GitLab? So you can use any of these options. So if you're using GitHub, you can use Git actions. Or basically you can just, some organizations focus on using Jenkins. So Salim, for example, Salim, in the other training, Safaricom training, they were focusing on using Jenkins. But in class, I think we use GitHub actions. But we'll also, I think, look at Jenkins. It's an open source tool, and most places use Jenkins. So, and then we have So with the CI/CD, you have your pipeline, and you have a seamless delivery, integration, delivery, and deployment of your application. So with that, you'd also want to do what we call observability. You want to observe and monitor your application. So there's some tools that you need here, for example. So under observability, there are a number of things. And for example, there is monitoring. There is also, Salim, can you remember? There is logging. What else? Yeah, you'd also want to do something called like tracing, especially if you're handling security and profiling. So you trace and you profile. So you want to know this request, where is this request coming from, where is it headed to, and things like that. And you want to profile good and bad requests and stuff like that. So for monitoring tools, under monitoring, you might use tools like Prometheus.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay, great. I've scribbled quite a lot of stuff here since we started, but no problem. Sorry about that. Okay, so it was just an introduction anyway. So I think we've talked. So I said, I mentioned networking, and I was talking about protocols, and then I went ahead and I said you also need to know Git, and I know most of you already know this stuff, so it should be easy. We will not repeat it. We did a course on that, so if you don't know, you can always go back and see, and there's a video even on that. And then there's containers. So we looked at containers, and we just looked at that in the previous week. And basically Docker, because that's what is used mostly. So Docker and some of so besides Docker, I think, yeah, under containers also there's an element of orchestration, and there's something like Kubernetes or Docker Swarm. I remember Salim mentioning Docker Swarm. Yeah, so you can either use Kubernetes or Docker Swarm, but mostly most places they use Kubernetes. Okay, and then there's an element of CI/CD in the software development pipeline from integration, delivery, and deployment. So what are some of the tools that you can use for continuous integration, continuous delivery, and continuous deployment? So when you're building that pipeline, you can automate the pipeline, or you can automate the pipeline by simply using a tool like Jenkins. Also Git Hub Actions, where we have Git workflows, also can help you to simply automate this process, or you can use GitLab, and you will have to write your configuration using YAML. You'll do YAML configurations, so you write your config files using YAML. So we'll also learn a little bit of YAML at some point. And then there was something to do with observability. You have your pipeline, working, but then you want to have an idea of what's going on. Are the applications actually running? Which one is down, and stuff like that, so that you can fix that. So under observability, we said there are a number of things. We just want to monitor your infrastructure to ensure that everything is working accordingly, and if any service is down, you also want to fix that. There's an element of logging. How do you collect like all the logs and sieve the logs and just get the necessary logs that you need for to actually get insight of what's going on? So there are tools that you can use for logging. I think we had a tool like Grafana here. I think Grafana, Elasticsearch. I don't know if I'm writing. There's Elasticsearch. There is Kibana, and so on and so forth. And then there is tracing. You want to be able to trace requests, for example. Especially if you are handling security, you want to trace where is this request coming from and where is it headed to, and stuff like that. And then you want to profile those requests as good or bad and stuff like that. And there are a number of tools that you can also use there, like OpenTelemetry, and there was another one like Jagger. So there's so many tools, so you just like pick one. And of course, there is I'm sure most of you have gone through this. Now, when you're told to learn Linux, some of you think it's a joke. So there's Linux OS. So you need to be at least familiar with Linux and some of the basic commands of Linux, because most of the hosting environment you will be interacting with will be Linux-based environment. So it's good to know a bit of Linux commands and stuff for you to survive in that environment. Scripting languages. So there's basic commands and scripting. So scripting, most of the times you'll get that most people use Python or they'll use Golang. So you can also learn Golang or Python. You should be good. Like Safaricom said, they use Python, but some places they use Golang. Sorry. Yes, I'm coming in a few. 10 minutes. Okay, so we should be winding up. And then, of course, cloud, because at the end of the day, we are deploying. Where are we deploying our applications? We're deploying our applications to cloud. So you need to be familiar with a number of cloud, but majorly AWS. At least some introduction. I mean, just some not introduction. Some basic understanding of how the cloud works. So you can learn AWS at the introductory level. AWS. You can also look at GCP, Google Cloud Platform. You can also look at Azure for Microsoft. So these three, you will be good to go. But personally, I have an experience because I've interacted with the three of them. So when you learn, for example, Microsoft Azure, you get that when you pick up Google Cloud, it becomes so easy because the knowledge is more or less the same. So there this concept, just understand what infrastructure as code is. Okay, there's platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service. There is what else do you guys know about cloud? There is
Software.
function. Yeah, software as a service. There is function as a service. Yeah, cloud functions. We call them Lambda in AWS. I don't know, the name differs, but it's the same concept. Right nowadays we also have other things besides these four, but these are the major ones. Yeah, so I at least understand that, and different cloud resources, yeah, like EC2, and provisioning, understand different resources and how to provision those resources. Yeah, like EC2 in AWS, it's just a virtual machine. So the name will differ across different cloud providers, but once you have the understanding, then it becomes easy. Why do we insist on you understanding cloud? Because nowadays people we deploy our applications to a cloud environment. So yeah, and when we're doing infrastructure as code, so there's a thing to do with infrastructure as code. The resources, the infrastructure will be provisioning will be on cloud. So you can get that you are provisioning different infrastructure, provisioning resources on different cloud platforms. For example, you might have one service that you're hosting on AWS, and another service you feel like it will be better to host it on GCP. So how do you coordinate all that? So we have this concept of infrastructure as code, where you just define the kind of infrastructure you need, and then you automate the process of provisioning and monitoring those. So there will be an element of infrastructure as code in the DevSecOps also. We'll look at this.
Excuse.
Yes.
What do you mean by provisioning? What does that mean?
Provisioning your resources. Okay. So basically spinning up those resources.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just spinning up those resources. That's provisioning. So under infrastructure as code, we have we have tools that you can use to basically. So infrastructure code as code is so easy. I mean, you will have learned YAML, so you still use YAML here to do. You're basically doing configurations, but then in your configuration, you're defining that I need this resource, I need that resource, And if you need for example an EC2 instance, which is like a virtual machine, what kind of virtual machine do you need? What kind of space in terms of storage, for example? What kind of the type of RAM you need? Yeah, of which capacity, things like that. So those are things that you define in your configuration files in infrastructure as code. So in this case, you're not setting up the infrastructure like physically the way you get one thing and then you start setting it up, but code does it for you. You just need to write something like code, which is not procedural code, but you just write code, and that code will spin up the resources that you need, connect you to whatever cloud provider you want, and the resource you want from that cloud provider, and continue with the rest of the automation process of deploying applications and stuff like that, and even monitoring the applications and giving you reports of which applications are up, which resource is up, which one is down, and stuff like that. So you can easily do that under infrastructure as code. And the tool that you can use here is a tool like Terraform or there's CloudForce, but most people use Terraform. So I'll just write here Terraform. Hope I'm writing it correctly.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So let's say as a DevOps engineer, are you supposed to know everything here, or are you supposed to be like a master of some of, like,
At
let's
least
say
yeah.
in infrastructure as code and cloud, and then you are an expert in that? You're just supposed to know everything and be able to do everything?
I think you need to understand the whole pipeline, all the whole pipeline at each and every stage. But then there are some issues that you might not, that might need an expert, like security, for example, scanning and penetration testing. You might just have an idea of the kind of tools that might be used, but you will not be doing that. But you can set up the whole pipeline and integrate those tools, including even the security tools. Yeah, but you don't need to cram everything. At least know one tool at each stage, and then of course, depending on the place you'll be, they will go with whatever tool they deem useful or accessible to them based on their finances and whatnot. So the thing is, just at least have an idea of the flow, the stages, the different stages, and the different things. Yeah, but these are just like the basics you need to have. Yeah. Does it look like too much? I think the more you stay in there, it becomes like it doesn't become so complicated. But at first, it looks like it is too much, but it's not. Yeah. So there is Terraform. We said that you can use Terraform to for I don't know, handling provisioning and whatnot, in infrastructure as code. And for configurations, you can use a tool like Ansible. Yeah, so there is Terraform and Ansible, because you'll be writing a lot of configuration files. So how do you manage all those configuration files in terms of versioning? So you have to also, all the configuration files have to be versioned. So the best tool to use for versioning and managing the configuration file is Ansible. And then to automate the all infrastructure as code thing, you can use Terraform. It can help you to do that. Okay. And then there was another element of I'm finishing. There's chaos engineering. So what chaos engineering is all about is now we have our pipeline, we have our applications up and running, we've provisioned everything. How do we do stress testing? Yeah, so how we are basically looking at is resilience. Yeah, I don't know if I've written that correctly, but the resilience of our infrastructure. So in case one service goes down, how will our infrastructure react to ensuring that that service gets up and running again as quickly as possible? Yeah. Do you have like redundancy and stuff like that? So basically, chaos engineering is we intentionally deprovision a service or kill a service, and just to see how the whole system reacts. in production. Yeah, so that is chaos engineering, and the number of tools that can be used here. For those ones who were privileged to be part of the training that we went through, there was Chaos Monkey, for example. There was something like Gremlin, and so Litmus. These are just some other tools that can be used. Litmus, Gremlin, and there's what you call Chaos Mesh. Yeah. So basically, it's just testing the system, stress testing the system. In case our system is attacked and one of the services is down, maybe because of denial of service attack or stuff like that, how does the system react? Does it quickly provision another redundant service of the same kind, or does the whole system go down and stuff like that? So we're just introducing chaos into the whole system to stress test the system. Yeah. And so there's lastly, there is an element to do with the policy, because we are handling security, and I mentioned regulations, international regulations and standards, that it's good for you to know nowadays. It's not just enough to be a software developer, or it's not just enough to be a DevSecOps engineer without you not understanding policies, international regulations and standards that apply to the way we handle data, safeguard data and stuff like that. So we have to abide by that, and we have intelligent tools nowadays where you can enforce some of these standards in the pipeline. So in case a developer works on a product and pushes the product and it doesn't comply to one or two of these standards, then it will be flagged and you'll be asked to do a good job to go and fix those issues, maybe to do with the exposing sensitive data and stuff like that. Yeah, maybe the developer is supposed to ensure that there is encryption of sensitive data, and the developer failed to do that. So the pipeline will just when you get to this stage, the pipeline will scan the software and identify those issues and report back. And of course, that product will not be deployed until those issues are fixed, which is a good thing. Yeah. And lastly, there is a service, we call it service mesh. My handwriting might not be that good, but yeah. So this one also has to do with the way we control communication between different services, because at the end of the day, in a DevOps environment, we have different services. If you're doing microservices, we are talking to different tools within the ecosystem. Yeah, so how do we control communication between services? So we need to have something like a service mesh, which handles control of dissemination of information or communication between different services in our infrastructure. So basically that is it for today, and maybe there's a tool under this called Istio. There's another one called Linkad and Consul, that can be used to monitor and manage communication between different microservices, for example, or different platforms. Maybe we have a service on AWS talking to another service on Azure, and so on and so forth. So how do we harmonize and control that, ensure there's the secure communication between services? Yeah, so that's basically it for today, and I think it is quite a lot, but so we'll be moving stage by stage and looking at all those tools, and yeah, trying to do things practically. I think we'll resort to the practical way of doing things. So we'll start by setting up a simple pipeline, and then later on we'll start introducing these elements at each and every stage, so that you also get to see when you talk about testing and testing your application. For example, unit testing, automating unit testing in the pipeline, automating security tests, automating what else, integration tests. So you see, you have these different types of tests, so we can automate all those tests in our pipeline, in our DevSecOps pipeline. Plus, that's just testing. Yeah, and then we show you how to do other different things too on the pipeline. Yeah, so if